Casey, he would tell me, he said, they're hanging up there. He said, between me and they, whatever that is. We were coming along home, so we're almost at the station, and Jane told me, she said, Steve, I found Bigfoot. I said, where? And there's this guy dressed in a Bigfoot costume, and he was standing there waving at the train as it went by. There he is. How you doing, Rob?
I'm just trying to hang there on the stick.
You look good.
Well, thank you.
Just keep that hand up.
This is Kit Parkhill.
Mr. Parkhill, there he is, sir. Steve Harley.
I didn't recognize you with the mask. There you go.
But anyway, everybody there's she said there's a guy. Every time the train comes in, they would run one back. Every time the train comes in, he has a bigger costume that he puts on. And Christmas time in the season, sometimes he's like a scarecrow, sometimes he's like Bigfoot, sometimes he's Santa Claus. If they run this spray, he's like a leprechaun.
Yeah, she's like,
Oh, you're an athlete.
it's a whole worksheet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Is that the state people?
Did I ever tell you that my wife, Jennifer ancestors buried there in the cemetery?
Yes.
Great grandfather, great yeah, my wife's she's from here in Texas. Her mother's side was the whole 100 is what they call it. It's in that loss with the whole 500, whole 300. Her mom's back in war, and she, as far as we can tell, she wants to die. And then there's so much more to it. They know what she's saying. And so she had way on the I mean, she's got it in her blood. We were in Charleston, they said the same thing. I said, girl, I need to start letting you go. There's several things in Arkansas I want to do. One of the things that I absolutely love is just keep your time there.
Yeah.
Welcome. Lee McDonough, can you lead us in our invocation, please?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for the beneficial rains. We thank you for Rotary's focus on water and sanitation during the month of March. Make us mindful of the importance of clean water, as you did last month when the water was turned off. Let us also realize that that plays a significant part in the health of people around the world, especially as Rotary tries to eradicate polio. We thank you for this food which you bestowed upon us. We thank you for the hands that prepared it. We thank you for all the blessings of this life, for our Rotary lives, for the opportunity to do service to our community and around the world. In all these things we pray, each in our own way. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the altar we lie? Lots of God when we have, and the light sets free. These more times and bright songs through the meadow sky. Oh, the land of free ones, where so gallantly free. And the rockets right there, the vultures singing, came through the night. And our flag was still there. Oh, the sailors that so straight now, everywhere. Oh, the land of the free, in the home of the
Thank you. Please be seated. Johnny Ortiz, would you please introduce our guests for the day? We have one more sneak in over here.
Perfect, absolutely. Some people call this the part where we get to introduce the guest. I like to think of it as introducing future Rotarians. But we have a guest with us this morning. Could we get your name and who you're with?
Ken Parkhill, and with this character out here, Bob Jones.
Thank you so much.
Class 71, I'm class 73.
Oh,
What was the name again?
all right, then we have a return visitor, correct?
Yes. Hi, I'm Shannon Jones, and I'm with At-Home Support with Courtney. Although she's not here today, but she's still on spring break.
Yes, she is. That's why I get to do this today.
Yes.
And then I believe we have, here, I'll let this one. I know her, but I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Karen, and I'm with Samaritan Counseling Center, and I'm here with Tom, and recently he's come.
You do have some good things. So it takes time, it takes time. Thank you for being here.
And Johnny is going to go ahead and hop right into our member spotlight, and he is spotlighting
Mr. Trey Patterson, come on down. Let's give him a hand clap. Come on up for our guest. This is the portion of the meeting that we get to find out a little bit more about our fellow Rotarians. And the importance of that is it allows you to get familiar with him, and at the same time, vice versa, reciprocity kind of takes place. So we're just simply going to be talking about family. Trey, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your family.
Well, I'm married and I have 5 kids, ages 8 to 20. So 3 boys and 2 girls. Sorry about that.
Yeah, our live stream.
So I've got 5 children, ages 8 to 20. I've got one who's just finished boot camp, just became a Marine. So we're proud of him. He's up in Virginia, actually just starting the next leg of his training. And then I've got one that's in 2nd grade, one in 6th, one in about to start high school, and one that's 20 as well. So,
How long have you been married?
I've been married 3 years.
3 years. That's awesome. We'll get to have you. And let's talk about, let's see, your occupation. What do you do, Trey?
I work for Design Center Signs. For those of you not familiar, we're an electrical sign contractor. We custom fabricate all types of signage. We specialize in large custom fabricated electrical signs. We also do smaller signs as well. So you might see us around town, but that's what we do. So we have one of our models is bring your brand to life.
Now, did y'all recently move, is that right?
Yes, we did. So you might have been familiar, we were on Grande for several years, between Old Jacksonville and Frankston Highway, kind of curving down. There's some new Peters dealership over there. We were right across the street. So we recently moved in November to another location.
Great. How long have you been in Tyler?
I've been in Tyler for about 11 years.
11 years. And what do you do for fun here in Tyler? What kind of recreation do you do?
I like to
Hobbies?
Yeah, sure. So I like to bike. I love to be outdoors, so I like to go biking when I can on the trails around town. So I really I like to bike. That's kind of a big focus when I have time.
Not hiking or
Not
yeah. Favorite trail?
South, so in and around kind of the trails that run up and down Old Jacksonville, on one side by Fresh, and it kind of goes down around the other side down to Cumberland. I've done Rose Road and some of those others too, but those are kind of close to where I live, so I have to do this.
That was a personal question. I just got a mountain bike.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to put it together and not fall apart.
Yeah.
Motivation. What motivates you? What gets you going? What's that switch? What flips that switch, so to speak?
Good question. I'm motivated to do the best I can at work and for my family, and I guess the overall drive for that is, to be a good father, husband, good servant, wherever I'm, planted and happy to be. So I want to serve God and do my best in everything that I do.
Awesome. I'm going to steal this one from Diane. Why Rotary? Why Rotary?
The reason I like Rotary and wanted to get involved in Rotary, which is different from other clubs I thought, is that it's not just focused on how does this help my business or how does this help me. I like to focus on helping others and how that's incorporated in networking with others. So that is very attractive to me. That's why I feel popular.
Yeah, the quote that you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. Fantastic, awesome. Thank you so much.
And I see Bill Coates is supervising the name drawing there, but Johnny, you don't have anything today? No? Oh, okay.
I will get things together. We're nearly there. Okay, just our NCAA tournament contest time. We're working on the right back there. Who's coordinating, by the way?
She's not here.
Courtney, okay, she's got several. Anyway, Steve Morlander has Gonzaga. They're a top seed, just kind of working the left side. Michael with Oklahoma, Jeff Johnson, Missouri. Nancy Crawford has Creighton. Diane, you got Virginia. Jeff Johnson has Ohio. Chris Hyde, USC. Courtney with Kansas. Bishop Strickland, Eastern Washington. Courtney also has Oregon. Vaughn Johnson, Virginia Commonwealth. Iowa is the number 2 seed. Jeff Johnson. How did you buy, Jeff? He's got Iowa. Tony Harris with Grand Canyon. Let me just do the top seeds real quick. At least read the top. Baylor is leading go. Hey, Lee. Baylor's a top seed, first time in their school's history. Texas Tech, Brown Hall, and just kind of hit some of the. There's 6 Texas teams in there. North Texas, A&D. Let's see here. The top seed in the Midwest is Illinois. That's Jim Robbins. At University of Houston, Trey Patterson. I'm just hitting some of the high notes here right now. The 2 seed in the East is Alabama. Courtney, you got that one.
Wow.
Texas, Michael. Is Michael Texas name Yanez? Is that right? Yeah, hey Michael. You got Texas. They're the 2 seed. I'm not even sure who I have here. I think I have Colorado. It's done by. Those are just a sampling. We haven't quite finished it yet, but it's. So I don't know, we've been doing this for over a decade, haven't we, Tom? For the NCAA tournament, $10 a square. We've been doing this for well over a decade now, haven't we? This NCAA tournament has been pretty profitable for the club. Anyway, we're just about done with it. And Dak Prescott is a very wealthy man.
All right.
He can get a lot of money to work with.
So we'll send an email out that has everybody's slots and all that stuff. So thank you guys for putting that together. Chris, you want to come on over while I make a couple of announcements? Beth couldn't be here today, but she wanted to pass along that spaghetti supper for planning is going well. We should get some more updates on that soon. Get ready to start fundraising. She had a good time attending PETS. It was a little different this year. PETS was all night on every night on Zoom and all day Saturday last week. So it was a little much. But Chris is going to give us a couple of takeaways from his experience for PETS.
It was long. 6 days. And the normal pets that we've attended in the past was like 2.5 days. You're there, you're engrossed, you get it all experienced, you don't have any distractions. And it is a lot more, it's a lot easier to absorb. But doing it from 4 to 8, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday from 9 till, we got out early at 3:30, 4. So that was a little bit kind of, not distracting, but, there were some people in there you could tell were a little distracted. But overall, the information that was exchanged it was always good to hear, because when the good point I like about that is that whenever you're sitting there and you hear what other clubs are doing, what other clubs are successful at, and the people just throw, just simple comments out there that, other people take and run with, and that they can use other, and they build off of, that you think is nothing, fantastic, but other people, they take off and run with it as well as what we did. So, I mean, other than that, it was a lot of good stuff that we're going to be able to build on.
Yeah, I concur. It was a very long week, but it was nice to interact with folks and just have some fun. We were dancing to Happy, Zoom dancing to Happy Saturday morning. That was kind of fun. Were you dancing?
Yeah.
But thank you, Chris. Beth also indicated that if you have any interest in serving on the board next year, please let her know. We have a variety of positions on the board. We have chairs who lead specific sections, and then we also have committee members. So just reach out to them, because it takes all of us to make our club run successfully. Speaking of, I have some service opportunities. Dalton, you want to talk about them?
You go ahead.
Okay. Dalton's like, what? It's time for us to get ready to do our next quarterly installment at Burkeville Park, and our next blood drive, as well as one that Dalton and I had discussed doing some day work at one of the Path Community Homes, painting, getting ready for the next tenant. So we're looking for some people to step up to take the lead on these, that Dalton doesn't have to do all the work. Most of them involve one phone call to the agency to coordinate a date and a time, and then getting our Rotarian friends signed up and then reminding them to come on out. So if you have an interest in taking on one of those roles, please see Dalton. Dalton, are you here on meeting, or are you gonna have to go? Okay. Or you can let me know at the end of the meeting. All right, I think that's, any other announcements from the floor? Tyler?
Spring Flag Safety Trail is coming.
That it is, thank you very much. For those of you who live in the Azalea District, how are the Azaleas looking? I saw somebody post that they were kind of not so great. All right, oh, I do have a couple other news. I have some name tags. Michael Yanez, Chris Ivy, did I see Terry Hicks sneaking on me? No. Patty Williams, Lisa Hardy, Kelly Lewis. Will you take those of these back? Take those. You'll also see on your table, I found some of these when I was cleaning up at my house over the weekend. This is a brochure we put together a couple of years ago on Rotary. It's a little bit out of date because the mission of Rotary has been updated. But this is a good tool, and they're on all the tables, and we have a lot more. This is a good tool to give to people who might have an interest in Rotary. It gives information about service to our community, our spaghetti supper, youth services, our Christmas parade, service to the world, and it gives some information. You can even put your contact information on the back. So if you want to take a few of these and pass them out, please let me know. I put some on the table, and if there's not enough, we can give you some more. Okay, at this point, there was a couple other announcements. Let me open up my phone so I can do it. I want to welcome back Rob Jones. We haven't seen a lot of him lately, but it's good to see you, Rob. And I also want to recognize the fact that this year in March starts his 39th year as well of being Rotarian. According to our Rotary records, you must have originally joined 39 years ago, and you get credit for all of those years. So congratulations on that.
My fellow Baylor attorney buddy.
Yep, he's back there.
He's here somewhere.
Yeah, Jim Eccles, he's also.
He's also 39 years.
Yeah, Jim Eccles right behind you. And I believe John Hart gets to take credit. I think John Hart gets to take credit for both of you guys. Somebody snuck in on me, and I wanted to take a moment to introduce our district governor, Jack Welby. Hi, Jack, how are you?
Great to be here. I apologize for getting here a little bit late. I did want to congratulate y'all. I took a quick look before I came. Y'all have only 2 more matters that you need to log before y'all become a citation club. And I think that's superb progress for the year. And so congratulations and keep on going.
Thank you, Jack. And just so you know, 2 of those are basically done. One is Ryla, which we have our 6 to 10 meetings. It just hasn't, I don't know when that will post because I think they post that. And then our Polio Plus goal, I think our goal was 2,500. We're sitting at 2,000, and you just mail off a check, Tom, for 1,700.
I think it's on the mail to go out on April the 1st for some reason.
Oh, for some reason it's written to April 1st. But our fundraiser that we did back in the fall, the polio night out that we had. So we're going to have those 2 goals, so we're there. Woo-hoo, great job. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to introduce our guest speaker. Colleen couldn't be here today, so I'm going to we all know him. He's been a member of our club for about 6-8 months now, and he's sung to us, and now he's going to talk to us. Michael Hurley, the voice of preservation. Michael Hurley is the president of Hurley Benefit Services. His agency specializes in individual and group life health insurance and employer benefits. He's a graduate of Southern Christian University and the Brown Trail School of Preaching. Michael is a member of the Western Room Church of Christ, the South Tyler Rotary Club, sits on the City of Tyler Historic Preservation Board, and Historic Tyler Inc. Board of Directors, and is a loan executive to the United Way. He and his wife Tammy, the most beautiful woman, how do you call her? Prettiest girl in Texas. Prettiest girl in Texas. Have 4 children, and he loves to brag on his 2 grandchildren, Lucas and Lily. Michael.
Thank you, Madam President. Can I get David to please put the PowerPoint up for our presentation today? This is a Smith County Judge presentation. I'm looking for the presentation we looked at prior to the meeting. Or would you like for me to go back there and try to pull it up? Because I know where it's at.
Yeah, for now.
While we're waiting, I will just say that I moved here to Tyler almost 4 years ago. It'll be 4 years next month. And here I am talking to our Rotary Club, of which I'm quite sure many of you have lived here many more years than I have. And I'm going to be talking to you about some preservation on some homes that you may know more about than I've ever thought about. And I was telling my wife I was a little intimidated speaking to this group about some of the historic preservation that goes on in Tyler. And she told me just to make mention that at the end of my presentation, those of you that have more details than I do, we want to welcome you to contribute to some things perhaps I have not learned yet about Tyler, our history, and the historic preservation that goes on with historic Tyler. Also, while we're waiting, oh, you in front. I wanted to recognize Dalton. Dalton is not only one of my favorites in the club. I don't know why, I just like him. But he is also a fellow board member with me at Historic Tyler. And so if you don't like anything I have to say about Historic Tyler, if you see Dalton to complain and not complain to me, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being present.
You're welcome.
All right, so my speech today is primarily intended to educate you on the work of Historic Tyler Incorporated, give you a little bit of background in the Preservation Act. This was an act that is under the auspices of the National Park Service. And because of this act, historic preservation organizations began to pop up all over the country, including Tyler, especially with the celebration of the bicentennial. For those of you that are my age or older, I'm 56. I certainly remember the celebration of the bicentennial in 1976. And so with the National Historic Preservation Act already in place, and the celebration of all things historic in 1976 with the bicentennial of our country, many organizations like Historic Tyler popped up all over the country as more and more people began to realize the historic significance of the structures that our communities are blessed to have. And Historic Tyler is a result of that movement, established in 1977. And it's important for you to recognize, I moved here from Victoria, Texas, a beautiful city of Victoria, not as pretty as Tyler, but one of the things we loved about Victoria was they had a beautiful historic section, bigger than most cities, especially their size. Victoria is about 60,000 population. So when we moved to Tyler, we were even more impressed with the large number of historic structures that we're blessed to have. Not just the Azalea District, although we're going to talk about them, and of course they come to mind right away for all of this. But really, Tyler, for the size city we are so blessed to have so many structures of historical significance, much more than most cities our size. And let me give you one quick example of that. Being a great lover of history, whenever I've been in Longview on business, I always look for the historic areas, and they do have a small historic area in Longview. But Longview is a city of 80,000, maybe a little bit more than that with the latest census, but they have just a tiny fraction of the historical structures that we have here in Tyler, and we're just 20, 30,000 more in population. So the work that Historic Tyler does is really significant because of the large amount of work that there is to do out there. So share with you a little bit at first. Our mission statement is to promote the preservation and protection of Tyler's historic structures and sites through advocacy, education, involvement, and public and private investments. Historic Tyler has truly been the voice of preservation since its founding. By the way, I got a little ticket at our newsletter. It said our speech today is Michael Hurley, the voice of preservation. And I'm not the voice of preservation, but Historic Tyler is the voice of preservation. When historically significant structures are threatened with demolition or neglect or alterations that are not in compliance with the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation, Historic Tyler intervenes on behalf of those historic documents, or historic buildings. So what do we do? I think that's a really a great question to ask. And I think the most important thing is to understand again that what we're trying to do is protect some of the structures that are part of our heritage as Tylerites, or are we Tylerians? I'm not real sure. I'm assuming we're Tylerites. But what I've got here is some pictures of some beautiful structures that have been a part of our heritage that have been lost. I particularly point us all to the old historic courthouse. Now I recognize, especially with the county judge this last week, that courthouse will not even come close today to holding the offices of our county. We've grown so large. But you know, in my opinion, just judging from the paintings and photographs I've seen of that courthouse that was torn down in the 1950s, this courthouse certainly rivaled the beauty of the courthouse in Marshall and in other places. Maybe it didn't knock Waxahachie and very beautiful courthouse off the pedestal of the most beautiful in the state, but certainly up there. And when we lose buildings like the original, like the courthouse that was built in the early 1900s, and again destroyed, torn down in 1952, we're really going to lose a little piece of who we are as a community and as a people. And that's really what historic Tyler is all about. Here's just a few of the structures that historic Tyler has been instrumental in saving. And many of these you're going to recognize. First, the 1880 jail, formerly the Lewis Hotel, and now the Randy Gilbert Law Offices, were purchased by historic Tyler in order to save it for demolition. We think of the Mayfair building, built in the 1920s. We helped establish an organization, a 501c3 organization, called Friends of the Mayfair. Most of the Friends of the Mayfair are members of historic Tyler. And this group advocates and raises funds for the preservation of this building. I think most of you recognize it. This is one of the buildings on the grounds of the East Texas Fairgrounds near the stadium and the Hardy Convention Center. And we helped fund exterior renovations to the building that have already been done. Most of you may be aware that this building, as I shared with you, located on the East Texas Fairgrounds, is an example of Art Deco architecture. And of course, it needs continued rehabilitation or refurbishing. But the building originally had a red carpet outside and a long breezeway that would welcome celebrity performers. And the stage at the Mayfair has hosted big name performers such as Elvis Presley, and Johnny Cash, and Dolly Parton, and of course, I'm sure the list goes on and on. Musicians, you see, often book shows in Shreveport and in Dallas on the weekends, and they would make a stop midweek in Tyler to entertain the crowds here on their way from one larger city or the other. And so the Mayfair is rather significant historically from the amount of big stars that it saw because of our location between the two large cities. We also think of the Carnegie Library located downtown. I know some of these are a little difficult for you to see, so I apologize for that. But the Carnegie Library, which is now the Smith County Historical Society, we've had a part in restoring and making sure that structure remains physically sound. We think of the Cotton Belt Depot, built in 1905. It's now a train museum. And we helped restore all the floors and the exterior restoration of that building, which is one of the many gems I've been telling you about that we're fortunate to have at Tyler. We think of the Woods building. I mentioned that I have quite a bit of volunteer hours in with United Way of Smith County. They moved into this building, I guess, time's flying, probably close to 3 years ago now. But we were a part of helping with that restoration. If you've not been in the Woods building, I know those of you that have been Tylerites for many, many years, you probably have fond memories of it. I know some people who've gone to different events there over the years, but if you haven't been in it since it's been restored, it truly is beautiful. And they're one of my actual accounts. I help with the benefits there, and so I'm there quite a bit. And I never cease to go in there that I don't enjoy taking the walk up the beautiful staircase that's been restored. We have part in that. We think, in my mind, one of the symbols of Tyler, the Rose Garden entry. Historic Tyler repaired and cleaned the brick to make sure that that symbol of our city continues on. As a matter of fact, my wife is the president of the United Daughters of the Confederacy on the state level, and we took her official photographs under that arch. And because we felt like being a Tyler Rose, that my wife is, that was one of the many symbols of our beautiful city, and it got published in their national magazine, which I'm pretty proud of. But my point is certainly is one of the examples of symbols of our city that we've had a part in making sure continue to exist. The McClendon House, which I know most of us are familiar with, built circa 1880s, was the home of Washington News correspondent Sarah McClendon, and the house, as most of you know, caught fire, and historic Tyler was there, and it was a part of helping with the restoration and the damage following that fire. And what about the POW building? I told Diana I was going to speak a little bit about this. I'm hoping at the end of our presentation to add some more that I might not know, but the POW building, which is now more commonly known to us as the PATH building, was originally the Gaffney Clinic and Hospital, and is an example of a masterpiece of Art Deco built in the 1930s. This style is more common in commercial design of that era than in residences, although from time to time you do see it in residences. In 2004 and 2005, Historic Tyler advocated and saved this building from destruction. Several employees, by the way, have, I understand, had accounts of ghostly encounters on the second floor. They attribute that activity to the fact that this was once a hospital, and if it was a mental hospital, there were probably hurleys there, so I might want to do my research. But then we've had a part in helping with the work at Oakwood Cemetery. We funded 3 different self-guided tours there and helped fund recently the ground-penetrating sonar equipment that was used to identify unmarked graves. If you're familiar with Oakwood, there's a large section that looks like a garden, of course, but there are no tombstones. And when we did the ground penetration radar, we found that there were literally hundreds of graves there. That entire section of the cemetery is full of graves, most of African American descent, and for whatever reason were not marked. And we're doing what we can to record those graves that are there, do the research that we can get done, along with the Board of Historical Oakwood Cemetery, to try to identify those and remember them. And there is a marker that's placed there now to those that are buried. You know, to the naked eye, you just say, wow, there's a lot of space here for additional graves. But the reality is, when we did the radar work, they found hardly a space open in that area. So another example of a little bit of what I'm proud to be associated with Historic Tyler about. Now, projects that are currently have in the works. First, I think some of you are aware that the Goodman LeGrand House, built in 1859, that we were a part of kicking off the restoration campaign to raise funds for that. This is a city-owned structure, and of course the city stepped for cash. I really enjoyed Judge Moran's presentation last week. And remember, he noted that the county is not as dependent on sales tax as the city. So this is a time with a pandemic and sales down over the past 12 months that the city has less funds than it had before. So our work to help raise funds for the restoration of this true treasure of Tyler is one that we're proud to be a part of. We also are in the process of putting together the paperwork and making the Pollard Farms area a national historic landmark. And I'll have a little bit more to say about that in a moment. And we're also putting together a book called The Art of Preservation. It's going to be a large coffee table book that will be produced by Historic Tyler to preserve some images of the homes that exist both now and in the past. And I think I was quite surprised. Our executive director is a wonderful lady named Ashley Washington. And Ashley was surprised. She's fairly new in the role. I think she's been in about a year and a half. And we were surprised to find that there is no book detailing the significance of the historic architecture in Tyler. And so that's in the process. I think that's going to come out more really next year. And I'm just hoping that my house might have just a little bit of square somewhere on there, because there are some awfully beautiful homes. I forgot to tell you, kind of what started this journey was we bought a historic home in the Brick Streets area. Moving on. Another thing that I'm really proud of is our efforts in preserving our heritage. So some of you may recognize this. This is the Riviera House. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I went over and looked at this house a couple times. I believe that it is on College on the north side here. What street? Bodog. Thank you so much. On Bodog Street. We funded to have this woman's architectural history documented by a professional historian. So I'm going to explain to you what I mean. So this is a picture of the home in the early 2000s. At the time, the owners had submitted a grant application to historic Tyler, and we were part of restoring this home and getting the exterior painted. And he was in the process of renovating the inside when a fire broke out, and there was very severe damage done to the home. And again, some of you have been down the street over the last several months, well, actually for the last couple of years, you've seen it's been quite an eyesore. And as a result, several citizens in Tyler have called into the city wanting it demolished because it is a danger to citizens and they have kids have to be playing around there. And part of my work with the Historic Preservation Board, they had to come to us for permission before they can destroy that house because of its historic designation. And when we found that out, I took that to Historic Tyler, because again, I'm on the Historic City Preservation Board. So I took it to Historic Tyler, and with just 2 weeks' notice, we paid $2,500 to have a professional historian come in to this old, burned-out building. Well, I just blew it, didn't I? Technology. Wow, I'm way behind. Just hang on. Anyway, we paid $2,500 for a historic preservationist to come in and to do a blueprint of the original building and take photographs of any significant architectural pieces that were there, and gave us a detailed report of over 300 pages that we subsequently preserved that information prior to its destruction, and then donated that to the archives of the Smith County Historical Society. So I'm really proud of that. And I have not been by there since the first of the year, but originally that order was going to have that home torn down somewhere in January. I don't know if any of you have been by there recently, but it was scheduled for demolition, and the federal government helped pay for that demolition, by the way, because of its historical significance. They were eligible for a grant to get that done. I'm curious, has anybody been over on North Eldora to see whether that home is there currently? I just haven't gone by in about 6 to 8 weeks. But if it's there, it's about to be torn down. I suspect it's already gone. We were part of preserving it. I'm sad that it burned, but there are some records left behind as a result of the work of Historic Tyler. All right, now as I mentioned to you, one of the works we're involved in is the Pollard Farm Area Survey. And what we're doing is we're in the process of filling out all the documents. We're in the nomination process, filling out the documents, to having this entire area marked as a National Historic District. And so some of you may live in the Pollard Farms area, and if you do, we're hoping you're going to join Historic Tyler as we look to make your area a historically significant district in our city. So that's a work that we're involved in, and quite frankly, it's taken a number of years because of the size of that area. When this survey is approved and made a National Historic Landmark, it will be the largest of the historic districts we have in the country. And by the way, not the country, in the city. By the way, I always get a little worried when we start looking at homes like Pollard Farms, and they start talking about how historically significant they are, and most of them were built when I was born. So I start thinking, that makes me an antique and historically significant, which is still hard for me to grasp because I do not feel like I'm an old man. By the way, I'm 56, I was born in 1964. So. You know, I think it's here on this slide, if you can see it. According to individuals who purchased and planted the land, there was building there between 1930 and 1970. I'm sorry, I thought the number was on there, but there are several hundred homes in the Pollard Farms area. And I apologize, I don't have that exact number. Where it is. Okay, the Pollard Farms area, can you help me out a little bit? It's going to be borderline on Loop 323. And this road, I believe, is the Beckham. So it's between 323 and Beckham, that whole area. You know, we do our bike bill every year at the Pollard United Methodist Church. That's kind of the center of that neighborhood. If that helps you a little bit. Don't ask the guy that's ever lived here 3.5 years for detailed directions. Does that help? If somebody could enlighten me a little better if I didn't do a good job. Were you going to say something, Steve?
No, that's exactly, you answered my question perfectly.
Okay, great. I'm either doing a very good job or I'm confusing everybody. I'm capable of doing both. All right. Moving on. One of the more notable achievements of Historic Tyler has been the formation, survey, and approval of nominations for our 6 current historic districts. Quite frankly, I can't imagine Tyler without these historic districts. There's so much of who we are as a people and an identity of who we are. First, we'll begin with the Azalea District. As most of you know, over 950 homes in the Azalea District, most built during the oil boom. I don't know, I was somewhere with my wife and we saw a little snippet of a documentary that said America was plunged into the terrible depression of the early 1930s, and I said to Tammy, "I'm tired." Because of the oil, I mean, Tyler did well during that time, and the Azalea District is a testimony of that. Again, over 950 homes, mostly built during the oil boom, in the late 20s and into the 30s. Well, actually, the building went on into the 40s as well, even a few new homes constructed in that area. We also have the Charnwood National Historic District. This is 12 blocks. It encompasses 125 structures, many of whom date back to the mid-1800s. And perhaps, in my opinion, the most beautiful of all the historic districts in town. I certainly love driving through there and looking at all the homes and the history that they represent. My home in the Brook Streets area, Brook Streets residential area, named for the streets that are brick in that area, and really again become a part of our national identity. I find it interesting, serving on the Historic Preservation Board with the city, one of the things that we're struggling with is when our brick streets, and we have so many for our size town, and they're valuable to us, of course, but sometimes our stockpile is growing smaller and smaller on bricks we can use to replace those when we do construction. And so sometimes we're forced to take small sections of street and pave them with blacktop in order to take those bricks for our stockpile for future repair. But those bricks are extremely valuable. But the Brick Street District encompasses 29 blocks and around 250 homes. And I actually live right next to Gary Elementary in the Brick Street area. And I'm on the corner of Chilton Avenue and I can't remember the name of the stupid street now, but the point I'm trying to make is right across the street from me is the most gorgeous white mansion known as the Chilton Mansion. Mr. Musselman and his wife own that, that's their offices. And I always tell everybody, I work as hard as I can in my garden so that I might be the second prettiest block on the block. Outside their home is beautiful. If you've been there and seen it. Here's some of the pictures of the brick streets going down. Next, we have the Donnybrook Duplex National Historic District. A lot of us don't know about these smaller ones. This is 18 duplexes, and they're a very rare example of post-war development. And they were built between 1947 and 1948. And most of these homes are over close to the Oakwood Cemetery. Fifth, we have the East Ferguson Residential District. This district encompasses just 6 modest, nearly identical homes built for working class families, most of them craftsmen. They were originally built to be rent-to-own houses between 1926 and 1930. And then lastly, we have the Shortline Residential National District. Again, a very small district. 11 homes there as well, and mostly built to house African American families. So we're working real hard to preserve not just the ones we're most familiar with, right, like the Charnwood District or the Azalea District, but we're trying to look at all of our communities and the significance those homes have in our history, and even expanding into the Pollard Farms area as well. Yes, number 6 is called the Shortline Residential National District. And again, it's over in the same area near Oakwood Cemetery on the north side of our downtown. Now quickly, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our largest fundraiser. One slide off. Part of what we do is help both businesses and homes go through the process of getting historic designations. This is the Tyler Historic Landmark. These are approved by the Historic Preservation Board that I'm a part of. And there's a big incentive because you get 50% off of your city taxes, which I thought was really great because I got my home designated. Then I realized that most of my taxes go to TJC and TISD, so it didn't save anybody's lives. I wish I could get 50% off of those. There's some tax abatement that's part of that. And by the way, the 3 I'm about to show you, for some reason people fear getting their homes designated because they're fearful they can't make changes. The City of Tyler's Historic Landmark designation is the easiest to make changes in. And the most difficult, believe it or not, is the Texas Historic designation. Texas is tougher on changes to your home once it's designated by far than the National Historic Registry. So we help with designations for all 3 of those. We're trying to do what we can to preserve our history. Now, Historic Towers, Tower on Tour is coming up
May the 21st to the 23rd. I hope many of you have taken part in that in the past. It is our largest fundraiser, and it's how we fund the projects that I'm telling you about so far this afternoon. This is our 38th year for the tour, and we have featured over the years over 205 houses, from Victorian style all the way to mid-century modern. We even have a mid-century modern on the tour this weekend, this year as well. These are 3 of the homes on the tour: the Hershey House, the Odom House, and the Waddell Conley building. I don't know a lot about that building, but I've been tasked with writing the article for it, so I'm going to be finding out all about that one. But I hope you'll make plans to be a part of this. Again, it's the 21st. The 21st is actually a candlelight tour, and then the 22nd Saturday and 23rd Sunday are larger days from 10 to 5 and 1 to 5. Tickets are $15 for members, $25 for non-members, and I have the web address for our organization on the last slide. All right, so let me give you briefly, how much time? Maybe 5 minutes, thank you. I want to give you briefly a little bit of history, and again, you may know more about these than I do, but if you would, please, I want to give you a little bit of history on the H. Heffler Proprietor home or building that was built in 1909. It was a grocery store. Kind of interesting on the history here. Mr. Heffler was born in 1873 and came to Tyler as an immigrant from Ukraine. And he opened up the Heffler Proprietor in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood at the time in North Tyler. This building is still in the family of its original owners, and Tylerites have an affinity for this immaculately preserved building with its charm and its endless potential. Unfortunately, the building also has a tragic history of a robbery that went terribly bad. A man by the name of H.B. Burks, charged with murder of Mr. Henry Heffler, a North Tyler grocery in his place of business. Heffler was killed in broad daylight by a masked man in his attempts to rob the grocery, and Mrs. Heffler was the only eyewitness to account for the shooting of her husband. Remember, the gentleman had a mask on. Of course, back in these years, they didn't have the same technological ability to capture information, and as a result of her not having a face-to-face identification, Mr. Burks was sentenced to 15 years in the penitentiary, according to an article, and he was sentenced in, not here, but it was moved to Waco. The trial was actually in Waco. But that building still stands, and probably several of you have seen it. This on the right is the Douglas Pollard House, built in 1873. My brother Jack Pollard is a Rotarian, and he owns this house. He's a part of the Tyler Rotary Club. Took me for a personal tour, and I got to climb the wooden ladder all the way to the top of the, I always say it wrong, is that cupola, the tower, how about that? And, but he had some fascinating stories. He bought that house in 1873. Jack Pollard's family owned the Pollard farm that they sold to build the Pollard area we were talking about. But anyway, the point I want to make is this house has 15-foot ceilings and a soaring 29-foot stairwell, and intricately detailed exterior shingles, and the history and architecture of this home truly is remarkable. It's on our designation list, of course. With all this rich history to pour over, I thought there was one story Jack told me that might be worth your while knowing. He said 25 years ago, in the downstairs bedroom, his bedroom is on the second floor, the homeowners continued to experience recurring ghostly disturbances only at night and usually in the middle of the night. And they would hear the pocket door to that bedroom downstairs shaking. And Jack said he even went downstairs and literally observed the door shaking. And it took him quite a long time to figure out what was going on with that. But they kept trying to find out, do they really have a ghost? What's going on with this old house? And what they discovered was that Jack was in the process of renovating the home, and there was no underpinning. And he had removed the underpinning while he was working underneath the house. And a family of raccoons had taken up residency on the walls. And they would rattle the doors, because as you know, raccoons are primarily active at night. And after many failed attempts to trap the raccoon, the homeowners desperately crawled under the house at 10 o'clock at night, Jack said, and sealed the hole where the raccoons were away. No raccoons were harmed, and the homeowners got rid of their ghosts. Quickly, the White Abel House, built in 1929 for Hugh and Mary White. This house is one of Tyler's most exceptional examples of revival architecture. Although only 35 years old in 1929, the owner, Mr. White, had attained a considerable success as a contractor. In other words, he had quite a few dollars. as evidenced by the grand home he commissioned, again at only 35 years old. This stunning house features unique architectural details such as steeply pitched gables, a whimsical half-timbered turret, and it is set back from the street on an expansive lot with formal French gardens in the backyard, all enhancing the home's grandeur. The rolling hill in the backyard are rumored, though, to have buried treasure in them. According to Mr. White's granddaughter, he was quite the character and owned slot machines that he would play with his men's club. He was a part of the Lions Club. And apparently the sheriff showed up at his house, knowing he was responsible for the slot machines, and demanded that he dispose of the slot machines immediately, or he was going to take him to jail. So Mr. White sent his wife to Dallas for a weekend of shopping at Neiman Marcus to keep her distracted while he took his construction equipment and several of his employees and is said to have buried the slot machines in his backyard. Now, if you look at the backyard today, there is a hill that looks out of place, and we summarize, the homeowner summarizes that that's where they are buried. Finally, I want to share with you, I switched it too quickly. The Hogg House, located on Chilton Avenue, was built in 1872 for then Governor James Stephen Hogg. He owned this house, his family owned the house until the 1920s. It was originally located downtown when someone had the foresight to move this house before it was going to be torn down because it was about to be destroyed. They literally took this house apart, board by board, took it over down on Chilton Avenue and reassembled it. And the Hogg House has been in its current location since 1959. So you drive down Chilton, we're thinking 1920s, 1930s era. And here's the house of former Governor Hogg, built in 1872. So I challenge you to take a look at that the next time you go by. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope it's been a great time.
Good job. I appreciate Michael's stepping in and doing this presentation kind of at the last minute. We were originally scheduled to have our 4-way speech competition today, but with spring break, the students weren't able to participate, so he stepped in at the last minute. I want to thank our guests again today, Shannon, Karen, and is it Chip? Your Kip. Okay. Thanks for coming to our meeting today. We hope to see you again at one of our meetings. As Chris mentioned, he just recently attended Lone Star PETS, and I did as well. And PETS stands for President-Elect Training, and I'm obviously finishing up my year as president. I did want to let you guys know that I have been selected to serve as assistant governor for the district for next year. Speaking of his family, Santana Rotary has had that role for quite a few years, following in John's footsteps. So I also attended Lone Star PETS last week. The first few days I was just in with some other presidents throughout the city. And then on Saturday I had assistant governor training. And I wanted to share with you guys a couple of my takeaways. Number one, I was really surprised, and Jack, you may have seen this as well. We're one of the few clubs in the state that actually have been meeting. Almost every single club that are in mine, we've been virtual. And I'd be like, oh. We've been meeting since the beginning of my year, and they were kind of surprised by that. So I think that's a great sign of who we are as an organization, that we're going to come together, meet safely. Our food's been a little bit different lately, but it still works for us. But the other thing I took away from it, and this is, everybody joins Rotary for a different reason. I feel like we don't do enough service activities as a club. Now, some of these clubs we're talking about, 15 service activities a month. Now, granted, they may be different sizes than ours, but I think I visit similar sized clubs as ours. So if I had my way, we would have had a lot more service activities this year. Obviously, the pandemic had other ideas. But I really want to challenge Beth and Chris to look at ways to expand service in our club, and also to look at ways of doing things differently. There's clubs out there that only meet like this twice a month. Once a month they have a social, and once a month they do a community service project. That might be a different way of doing it, because to be honest, I love Rotary. I love coming to our meetings. It's been great having this normal thing in an abnormal world lately. I don't get to talk to you guys. I'm up here getting the camera ready and getting the computer set up and finding out who will do this. I don't get to visit with any of you guys, but when we work a project, we get to visit. So hopefully we'll see some changes coming up with Beth and Chris. And I'm proud of our club. We've done a lot of great things over the years. Again, this year's been a little off, but I still think we're having a fantastic year. So I just want to encourage you guys to invite somebody to come visit our club. You join for a reason. If you join for a reason with your friend who works with you or your neighbor across the street, maybe they have a similar reason. I left this on the table. As a member, you get the Rotary magazine. And I was obviously in a cleaning mood yesterday because I came across about 2 years worth of these magazines. And I'll be honest to say, I haven't read them all, but I was thinking to myself, how can we use this magazine as a recruiting tool? Who has offices where the public comes in on a regular basis? I'd be willing to donate my magazines if we could put a sticker on the back that says, come join us at South Rotary and put our meeting date on there. So if anybody has a place where people regularly come and you'd like to have some of these magazines, Lee's holding up the brochures again. We've got a whole box of them. Again, unfortunately, they're a little outdated, but they still have most of the good information on them. That being said, any other announcements before we wrap up? Jack, thank you for joining us. Again, welcome to all of our guests. Well, and he's in the back, so I'm going to just, Jack, would you mind leading us in the four-way test?
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And then will it be fun? Okay, thanks for letting me see you.